Hello, my friends. Welcome back to English Story Journey, where we grow not only our English, but also our minds and hearts through the stories of great people. Today, you will hear the life story of a man who changed the world with his vision, creativity, and courage, Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple. This is not just a story about technology. This is a story about risk, failure, starting over, and never giving up. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this inspiring journey, while practicing real English you can understand and use. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. But life didn't begin in a perfect way. His birth parents were young and not ready to raise a child. So, they made a hard decision, to give Steve up for adoption. Steve was adopted by a loving couple, Paul and Clara Jobs, who could not have children of their own. They promised to give Steve a good home and a good education. Paul was a car mechanic. Clara was a bookkeeper. They were not rich, but they were kind. From Paul, Steve learned how to take things apart and put them back together: radios, televisions, engines. From Clara, he learned patience and care. Steve later said, "My parents were not college graduates. But they loved me. That was more important than anything." As a child, Steve was full of energy. He asked big questions. He got bored easily. At school, he was often in trouble, not because he was bad, but because he thought differently. Teachers noticed he was smart, maybe too smart for his grade. One teacher gave him candy just to get him to sit still. When he was around 10 years old, Steve's interest in electronics grew stronger. He would visit the garage with his dad and take apart old machines. He wanted to know how things worked. One day, Steve called Bill Hewlett, the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, to ask for some parts. He was only 12 years old, but he got the parts, and even a summer job at the company. He wasn't afraid to ask. He wasn't afraid to try. After high school, Steve went to Reed College in Oregon. But college life didn't make sense to him. Classes were expensive, and his parents didn't have much money. He dropped out after 6 months. But he didn't leave the college completely. He stayed on campus, slept on the floors of friends' rooms, and took the classes he loved, like calligraphy. That calligraphy class taught him about fonts and beautiful letters. Years later, those lessons helped create the clean design of the Mac computer. He said, "If I had never dropped in on that calligraphy class, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts." Life didn't always make sense looking forward. But looking back, the dots connected. After leaving college, Steve traveled to India with a friend, searching for peace, purpose, and truth. He shaved his head. He wore simple clothes. He lived in temples. He read books on Buddhism and meditation. That journey helped him see the world differently. He learned that less is more, and that real beauty comes from simplicity and clarity. These ideas stayed with him for the rest of his life, and became the heart of Apple's design. In 1976, Steve Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak, a brilliant engineer, started a computer company. They built their first computer in Steve's parents' garage. That company became Apple. Jobs wasn't a coder or engineer, but he had something powerful: vision. He believed that computers could be more than machines. They could be tools for the mind. And they should be beautiful, easy to use, and available to everyone, not just scientists. Steve was just 21 years old. But he dreamed big. He sold his car. Sold his calculator. They took the risk. And Apple began. Apple's early products, the Apple I and Apple II, were a hit. Soon, Steve was a millionaire. At age 25, he was one of the youngest people on the Forbes list. But he didn't stop there. He wanted to build the perfect computer. In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, a new kind of computer with a mouse, graphics, and friendly design. It was revolutionary. But it was also expensive. And not everyone understood Steve's vision. Inside Apple, there were arguments. Steve was demanding. He wanted perfection. He pushed people hard. Some loved working with him. Others hated it. In 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he helped create. It was a painful moment. Imagine being removed from your own dream. But instead of giving up, Steve started again. He said, "I didn't see it then, but getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me." He started a new company called Next, building powerful computers for schools and businesses. At the same time, he bought a small animation studio called Pixar. Pixar changed animation forever, producing Toy Story, the first fully computer-animated film. Pixar became a huge success. Steve's vision helped shape modern cinema. Even in failure, he found a new beginning. In 1997, Apple was struggling. The company was losing money, and its products were confusing. They needed help, and they turned back to the man they once let go. Steve returned to Apple. He simplified everything. He reduced the number of products. He focused on design, user experience, and innovation. In the next 10 years, Steve led Apple to create the iMac, the iPod, the iTunes Store, the iPhone, the iPad. These weren't just products, they were cultural revolutions. In 2007, Steve Jobs stood on stage and introduced the iPhone. He called it a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator, all in one. That moment changed the world. It changed how we connect, share, and live. Steve Jobs had turned a garage dream into one of the most valuable companies in the world. But behind the scenes, he was quietly fighting something bigger, cancer. In 2003, Steve was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He tried different treatments, even spiritual healing. He continued working as long as he could, introducing the iPad in 2010. But in 2011, his body could no longer fight. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away. He was just 56 years old. The world mourned. People left apples with one bite taken out in front of Apple stores. Leaders, artists, students, and creators everywhere felt the loss. Steve Jobs left us more than products. He left us principles. Here are 5 lessons we can all learn from him. 1. Follow your curiosity. Don't study what others say you should. Study what you love. It will take you far. 2. Failure is not the end. Getting fired from Apple didn't stop Steve, it helped him grow. 3. Think different. Don't be afraid to see the world in your own way. 4. Build with love. Steve said, "We make the buttons on the back of the drawer beautiful, even if no one sees them." 5. Leave something behind. Steve didn't just make products. He made a legacy. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Steve Jobs' story is a reminder that we don't have to be perfect, we just have to be passionate. You might be different. You might fail. But you can still leave a mark. So, my friend, what is your dream? What will you build? What will you change? If Steve Jobs' journey inspired you, leave a comment below. What lesson did you learn from his life? Rewatch this video to practice your English. Share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Subscribe for more stories that teach you English and inspire your soul. This is English Story Journey. Together, we grow, one word, one story, one dream at a time.